friends. How are you? Hi, Patti.
Hello, Kate.
So, welcome to Real Law State with Patti and Kate. Woo, woo. So, anyways, guys, one of the things, so we always talk about how we're off center. So we keep on trying to stay center. So I don't know what happens. I think our computers are haunted.
I don't know. I think it's a symbol for everything.
Yeah, right. Really,
we're a little off center.
Well, yeah, we're a little off center, and we just wanted to make sure that you understand that we don't take ourselves too seriously.
No,
but we did improve our lighting. We hope you like that. Anyway, so one of the things that I have to tell you about one of the first times that I actually worked with Patti in a professional manner. And I had come to her and I said, does this sound crazy? I want to give my parents I think it was a Christmas present. Their anniversary is 2 days after Christmas. And I said, I want them to sit with you for some estate planning.
Yep.
And I said, they are such wonderful, loving people. And they just I don't think they want to face this. They don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Nobody does.
They don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They don't want to think about that time that maybe one of them may be moving on to eternity. You know, they just didn't want to face it.
Yeah.
And so
hey, I'm still in denial about it, quite frankly.
So anyways, first of all, I want to thank you because you were awesome with them.
Thanks.
I do have to tell you, this is just a little segue. I said, whatever you do not go in there and say to her, we want to divide it 7 ways. Right? They come marching out. They're all smiles. And I'm like, how'd it go? Great, we divided it 7 ways. I'm like, Patti, get them back in there. That is not going to work.
I say nothing. I have client attorney privilege.
Oh my gosh. So anyways, my point is that, you know, it's a stressful thing to talk about.
Yes.
And it's stressful because it involves us phasing into a different part of our lives. And so we don't want to face it. And even more so, I don't think our parents want to face it.
No.
You know, so by and large, I mean, I have been on the receiving end of so many parents who did not face this and the children who have to try to deal with it.
Right. It can be very messy.
So anyway, I guess I just want to start by saying, all right, so that day that I came to you,
yes.
right, you helped me, but what was it exactly that you did?
Well,
and what are the options?
There's so many options. Here in Massachusetts, there's 2 places where you would find a title to property.
Okay.
You find it at the Registry of Deeds. We're always talking about the registry. We're talking about deeds
yep.
over and over and over. The other place is in probate. And so that's where a lot of our conversation centers around is probate and what happens to your property after you've passed away. What are your goals? What are your concerns? A lot of times people say, I don't want my kids to have to go to probate.
Yes, because that's what we hear all the time is like I don't want to go to probate. Do they have to go to probate?
Yeah. And that's a big concern. And I do have to say the probate code changed a few years ago, so it's not the worst place to be anymore.
Oh, that's good.
It doesn't take quite as long. That they've simplified a lot of the forms, thank goodness, because you'd needed a whole separate law degree for those other forms. So now they're a lot easier to manage, to file, etc. It doesn't take as long. There's actually some clerk magistrates in the probates now just handling these forms. So it is easier, but it would be even easier if you just put your house into some other creation, such as we were talking about earlier. The deed, how you word the deed, it could be important because that avoids probate. Or you put it into some type of trust, which is almost like creating a corporation or a separate entity that controls your property. Right. So as soon as you pass away.
So technically neither of them even own it anymore. The trust owns it.
The trust owns it, yes.
Right.
Yep. And depending on what kind of trust, et cetera, they may or may not be the manager of that trust, which is your trustee. But then there would be the successor trustee. You pass away. Your successor trustee could sign a deed the next day, could bang out that property. You know?
Okay.
So it makes life a little easier.
So a trust is a good idea.
Trust is a good idea.
So she mentioned that of how they owned the deed. And so for joint ownership, there's basically 3 different ways of owning it. One is tenants in common, which is the default in Massachusetts if you don't say anything.
Correct.
when you're purchasing a property.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't want you may want tenants in common, but we're not going to talk about that too much today. The other is tenancy by entirety, which essentially means, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost as if they're one. It's one, even it's like this married couple owns it together.
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Tenants. So they're joint tenants. So mom passes away, dad owns it automatically. So he doesn't have to go to probate because mom passed away. It's automatic. He would have to record a death certificate because you have to prove up the death that he owns it solely. But other than that, it's automatic.
So when I'm teaching class, one of the questions that comes up on the quiz is that the people owned it tenancy by entirety. Let's just say the mother passed away, and the mother had a will leaving hers to somebody else. And they said that could be not the way it goes.
Yeah. So tricky on mom. Wonder what she was thinking there. But anyways, all right.
Those kids to get something, right?
Or maybe it's her boyfriend on the side. But anyways, all right. So
the way your brain goes.
I know. I'm sorry. You just can't make stuff up sometimes. You know, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
So mom leaves it, her property to the
girlfriend.
cool boy. Oh, the girlfriend. Okay, we're getting really trendy.
I know. Which, by the way, is co-ownership.
Yep.
All right.
So if she did that in her will, but she owned it with her husband, and he's still her husband at the time of her death, so they haven't gone through divorce proceedings and just didn't change the deed. If they are still married, when she passes away, the property automatically transfers to her husband, and it doesn't matter what her will says.
Okay, so you got that. All right, so that's that one. Now, there's another one that I've seen for co-ownership, and this is not husband and wife. This is the mother, let's just say the mother's living, and she again wants to avoid probate.
Yeah.
So she says, I'm going to own it in joint tenancy with my child.
Okay.
So tell us about the pitfalls of that.
Don't do that.
That's right.
So people think, all right, let me just put my kids on.
Right, because joint tenancy, right?
Right. So I pass away, it automatically goes to my kids, and they can do whatever they want.
They avoided probate.
Yeah, it sounds great to me. Well, so they put little Johnny on there. Little Johnny has got a gambling problem, and now creditors are coming after him. He co-owns his property. Where
100% joint tenancy means they're like a cake, right?
Yeah.
You can't take the eggs out, you can't take the sugar out, you can't take Johnny out, you can't take mom out at this point in time.
So they put a lien on the property. So mom, who did nothing wrong, now has a lien on her property.
Other than wanting to avoid probate.
She wanted to avoid probate. Right. And now little Johnny's creditors are coming after the real estate. Or little Johnny was married to little Susie. I'm not sure why I'm making everybody little. But anyway, so little Johnny was married to little Susie. And now Johnny and Susie are getting a divorce. Well, guess what's part of the marital assets that have to be divided up?
Yes, you guys know this, right?
Property. So not a good idea to put the kids directly on the deed ever.
Right. Okay, so you got that. So joint tenants. So what you need to know for our purposes here, if you are going into estate planning, right, a trust would be your highest recommendation.
Absolutely, because you can be so creative with a trust. If people come in like, oh, what should I put in here? Put in whatever you want. And your parents were very creative.
Yes, our parents were creative.
Not to give away the secrets.
When we sent them back into the room the second time, I'm like, round two.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's no set answer. So I've had people who maybe had a little Johnny who had some criminal history, and they were a little worried about him, but they didn't want to cut him out of the will. Yep. So they put some conditions in the trust that at the time when they pass away, if he's still clean, sober, and hasn't gotten back into trouble, then he can inherit. And if not, it cuts him out. So you can do a lot of
different things.
Yeah, and you can't put all that on a deed.
Right, and there's another thing I just want to bring in here. Be really careful on who you choose for your trustee or your representative, or what is that exactly called?
So in your will, you are now called the personal representative. We got rid of executor, executrixes, although some old wills still say that. But in your trust, you are the trustee. And you have to be very careful about that. And there can be some self-dealing, if somebody's not trustworthy and they say, oh, I'm the trustee, so I have a lot of work to do. I need to buy myself a new Mercedes with trust assets to drive around and do all my duties. Well, that's self-dealing, and they'd be liable. And the beneficiaries could, in fact, sue the trustee. However, if the asset's already spent and you can't get the money back, too bad, so sad. So
I have had some experience in my real estate capacity with some challenges on the trustees.
Or they're not responsive, they're not getting things done.
So anyway, so that's a good point. So, all right, so now I want to and I'm loving this, guys. I'm loving this because I'm learning so much. So I have someone comes into my office, right, and they say, I need to sell my parents' house. What should I be looking to find out from them and from whoever their attorney is or whatever.
Well, let's make sure that mom and dad aren't actually still alive, because sometimes people try to sell the property from underneath mom and dad.
I never thought of that one. I haven't
Actually,
gotten that one yet.
yep, that was a case early on in my career that came down. That's son who had a gambling problem was the power of attorney, and he signed the deed for mom. Mom had no idea. He sold the property to somebody, and then mom got evicted. And this went all the way up through the appeals court, and they had to side with the son because he had the power.
Oh my God, that's awful.
It is awful.
That's
so
awful.
be careful, people. We all
Right.
love our children, but they are human.
Right. So, and I've seen some life tenancies.
Yes. There are sometimes, this was really big years ago when I first started practicing, a lot of life estates. We're doing a little less now for various reasons that I do not want to get into because this would be a very long video.
And we know you don't want long.
Nobody wants long. But there is a life estate deed. So let's just say I am going to convey this property to myself for my life and the remainder to my friend Kate. So what that means is I get to live there my whole life. She can't kick me out. I have to pay the taxes. I can't let the property go to waste. You know, I have to keep up with the maintenance, whatever. But upon my death, all Kate has to do is put a death certificate on record proving that I am deceased, and then she is now 100% owner and can sell the property at free will. Sometimes it's a little tricky too because unfortunately sometimes people when they get older, you go into a nursing home or something like that, and you're going to be there permanently, but they still have the right to live in this property for the rest of their lives. So the remainder been, so Kate, I go into some kind of nursing home, Kate can't sell my property until I'm deceased, even though I'm not living there.
Right.
So that could be tricky.
And frustrating, I'm sure.
So frustrating.
And that might have been one of the reasons why people are not doing this so much
That's
anymore.
one of the reasons, yeah.
So, okay, so there's that. The other thing is like, so when I'm checking, how do I know if they have a license to sell?
So, well, then that gets into your probate. So let's just say mom and dad both have passed, right?
Yep.
So mom or dad inherited from the other one, one passed. They didn't have a trust. So now it's going to go according to the terms of their will if they have one. Or it's going to go in accordance with the laws of intestate, which there's this whole chart in Massachusetts. You can look it up, and it says who inherits next in line when somebody passes away.
Kind of interesting, by the way.
I think it's very interesting.
So when Tracy and I were driving home from Maine, we decided to look up the laws of descent.
Of course you did. What else do you do?
Oh, you should see what else we checked. It's hilarious. Alpha, Bravo.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, so if I were to pass away right now, and I had no will, which I do, but if I didn't, first it would go to my spouse, and then there's certain conditions on that. Depending on the size of my estate, he may not get it all, and part of it would go to my children. And then if neither one of them are around, God forbid, we're all passed away, then it goes up to my parents. If my parents are not around, it goes to my brothers and sisters. If they aren't around, even your aunts, uncles. There's like a whole chart, and it goes right out to like, what's it like this second? What do you say? Like my second cousin removed? I don't know.
Once removed,
It goes far out. Yeah.
So even for young people, they should have a will.
My gosh. Well,
have a will and update a will.
Yes, and especially when you're young and you start maybe accumulating assets, I think that's huge. And also when you first get married and you're thinking about children, you don't have to name your children, but you can provide for them and have something like it's going to go to them, or this person's going to be the trustee for my future children who, you know, could control these things. But we're getting a little far.
We're getting off topic.
So anyways, so now they need to sell their parents' property. They're deceased. They don't have a trust. If they have a will, you're going to fill out those forms. You probably should have an attorney help you, even though it's made to be super easy. But in any event, you file those with the probate court. And love when people come in and say, oh, well, I'm the personal representative, and they like to hand me the will as if that means something. And I'm like, you're nothing, actually, until the court says you're something.
Deems you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Because people could object, you know, if they think you have a fraudulent will, etc. So you have zero powers to do anything with your parents' property until the court has stamped it and said, yes, you are in fact the personal representative. Okay. And so if there's a will, a lot of times in the more recent wills, if you have an old will, you may not have this language. In the more recent wills, current wills, we have language in there saying you have the power to sell. So you don't need a license to sell because the will is your power.
Okay.
Correct.
Awesome.
But if you die without a will, or if you die with an old will that doesn't have that power in it, then first you have to get appointed as personal representative, which can take some time. Then you have to sell your house, get it under a P&S, then you have to take that purchase and sale agreement, bring it back to the court, and get the license to sell the property. So that can take even more time.
Yes.
So that's the case you really don't want to find yourself in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that, and then if there's a trust and you're the trustee,
Mm-hmm.
and that person comes to us as real estate professionals,
Yep.
we're good, or we need to?
We're good, but there's a couple of things. I just recently had this happen. So there were these several siblings who they don't get along.
Right. So that's definitely not my family.
No, not your family. So anyways, so several, and actually it's only 5, so
Okay,
definitely
there
not
you
your
go.
family. So they had come to me early on before mom had passed, and 2 of them were co-trustees. It's always good to have co-trustees because at least you have a checks and a balances on that, right? You don't have
nice.
just both
One
of them
person.
going off buying Mercedes. So you have the checks and balances, and now mom has passed. So now the siblings are like, what do we do with the house? So of course, another sibling lives in the house because they were living in the house with mom when they passed. Trustees want to sell the property. Okay. So there are 2 different things going on there. The trustees, by the terms of the trust, absolutely have the power to sell. However, they have fiduciary duties to the beneficiaries to get the highest and best value for the property.
Yep.
And because they have to ensure that the beneficiaries are getting their share, which is the intent of their mother when she created it, right? So we have trustees who are now apparently selling it for less than fair market value to somebody else. And now the beneficiaries are all in a tizzy, and why isn't it on the open market? And that's just a whole host of a mess. So trustees really need to, when you name somebody as a trustee, they have to, you have to be careful because you want to make sure they're not getting emotionally involved. They understand their fiduciary duties. They understand what they're supposed to do. And they're not just making up the rules as they go along, creating World War III, you know?
Oh, we get some hearts there. I think there had some smiles. Enough. I think an angry one there.
Ah.
So that was an accident, I'm sure. All right. So let's just simple it down to 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
The 3 biggest takeaways for you guys. Okay. So I think the first would be have a will.
Yep.
Second would, if you're doing succession planning, consider a trust.
Consider a trust. And the other, and I mentioned this, I know, in another video because it's my favorite thing to talk about because in today's day and age where I don't know, the divorce rate is, I don't know if it's still 60%, I don't know, it's up there. But in any event, you have these blended families.
Ah, yes, the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. So I'm going to tell this story again because I think
so
this
powerful.
makes the point. So we all, well, I don't know if you all watch the Brady Bunch. Some of you watching are probably a little bit younger than me, but
So it's Brady Bunch, you know, they're back on, you know. Like they're
they
all over the place. Yeah.
Oh, there is
so
the
Brady Bunch mansion.
HGTV or something. Yeah.
Anyway,
All right. So
back on track.
So you have Carol, right? Carol had her
Brady.
3 lovely girls,
Yes.
Marcia, Jen, and Cindy.
Yeah.
She met that handsome Mike. Now, Mike had his 3 kids, right?
Yeah.
Who was it? Greg, Peter, and Bobby.
Yeah.
Right?
Good job.
I'm telling you, that's pretty good. So they get married. Now you have this blended family. So if Mike and Carol owned that lovely property that apparently really wasn't the same inside as it was inside, as we're learning from HGTV. But
Yes,
anyways,
whatever.
Yep. So if, let's just say Mike passes away first, Carol's going to inherit if they own as joint tenants or tenants by the entirety that we talked about earlier, right?
Right.
So now Carol's the sole owner. So if she dies with a will, it probably says it goes to her 3 kids.
Right.
Or if she doesn't die with a will, it's going to her 3 kids. So now poor Greg, Peter, and Bobby, they've been disinherited just because Mike never changed the deed or did any kind of planning other than co-owning this property with his wife. And so unintended consequences.
Right. So obviously, if you're a real estate professional, don't give advice. Okay, I'm serious, like, because we don't know, and we can't say, okay, that's they say they've got a license to sell. All right, they're fine.
Yeah.
They say that they own the property and they put it into a life estate. I got caught on that one.
Yeah.
Right. That you got to check. Okay. And the other-
Or people say, oh, but I'm the personal representative. I can sell this. but
Right,
you're nothing
right.
because you haven't filed anything with court, and now
Yes.
you get your realtor in place, and you
and
can't
you have
do
a
anything.
house in place.
Yeah.
But the realtor. But here's the thing: if the realtor doesn't the realtor doesn't check
Yep.
and have a professional help, then what happens is you have now people buying and people selling, and a lot of people involved. And again, back to those unintended consequences.
Yeah.
All right, so be really super careful on that.
Yeah.
And then the second part of this, I think the lesson that I hope that you do is prepare. Prepare because it's peace of mind. Preparation is peace of mind.
It is totally peace of mind, and you don't have to have a complicated estate. I have a lot of people come to me, and they say, "I just want to keep it simple." Like I think they think I'm going to sell them some $10,000 plan, and I'm like, "We can do whatever you want, but you should have something in place that just outlines where it's going to go. It makes life so much simpler, and it doesn't have to be complicated, and you don't have to be wealthy in order to do this. It's really not that expensive, but none of us are getting out of here alive is the conclusion, even though I personally am in denial on that because I don't know, death sounds painful to me, so I don't want to partake.
But so that's all right. We don't have to do that right this second anyway.
Okay.
All right, so anyways, any questions before we close up? As I say, I know that this is not like we try to keep things fun and feisty, and this is not a fun and feisty one. However, this could be one that could be the most beneficial for you to really listen to, really absorb, and really integrate into your profession.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. So this is Patti and Kate. We're saying goodbye. Can you hear me? We haven't done it in a while. What? You haven't given them like the slogan.
So be bold and get it sold.
Yay!